On New Year's Eve, Stephen threw me into the pool, and I stayed there all night. He questioned me why I didn't crawl out by myself with my hands and feet, but he forgot that it was him who made me wear the mermaid tail. I simply couldn't crawl out of this pool. If it weren't for Laura kindly urging me, I wouldn't have come to see you at all. All you do is get jealous. I think you're not ready to be Law family's young mistress yet. Looking at his cold expression, I suddenly remembered the last time I argued endlessly because of Laura. I was hysterical, and Stephen slapped me. If you can't stand it, just call off the engagement. I bit my lip and said, fine, I'll call off the engagement. Stephen furrowed his brow and asked me with a stern face, are you really willing to do that? Later, his tone softened a bit. Actually, everything I said that day was out of anger. You don't have to take it seriously. I'm serious. You're just throwing a tantrum again. I tugged at the corner of my mouth, forcing out a bitter smile. He didn't know that just moments ago, I had sold my soul to survive. 10 days later, I would forever be bound to another man. When Jasmine was pulled out of the water, she was completely frozen. Her face was as pale as paper, her lips frozen and purple, her teeth uncontrollably chattering, making a clattering sound. The staff hurriedly wrapped her in a blanket. Laura strolled over with a glass of red wine, covering her mouth and chuckling softly. Jasmine is beautiful, with a great figure. No wonder the staff are so protective of her. Stephen put on a stern face, yanked the blanket off her, and sneered. Jasmine, don't you have hands and feet? Can't you crawl up by yourself? Do you know everyone is waiting for you? The New Year's Eve party was going just fine until you messed it up. Before he could finish his sentence, he grasped Jasmine's hand, but upon feeling her palm unusually cold, his angry expression suddenly changed, and his voice trembled slightly. Are you okay? Jasmine is perfectly fine, Laura interjected, positioning herself between them and looking up at Stephen with gentle eyes. Stephen, have you forgotten? A month ago, Jasmine took me swimming on the island. Stephen, please don't be angry. After all, Jasmine didn't mean to leave me on that deserted island. It's all because of that heavy rain that day. I had nowhere to hide from the rain and ended up sick for a month. It's really not Jasmine's fault. For a moment, the poolside was silent. The atmosphere was tense for over 10 seconds, and Stephen let go of her hand, his voice cold to the extreme, filled with unspeakable hatred. Using the same old trick again. I see right through you. Jasmine, how could I possibly get engaged to someone like you? Hearing the word engaged, Jasmine seemed to finally come to her senses, with a pair of wet, confused eyes looking at him. Stephen's heart softened. He furrowed his brow and took off his coat to drape it over her. The scent of wood notes drifted into her nostrils. Jasmine suddenly remembered that she was still alive. She is the daughter of the top aristocratic family in Haicheng, N, who was betrothed to Stephen since childhood. Her mother died in childbirth, and she grew up under the care of Law. Being childhood friends with Stephen's family spoiled her, and Law's mother treated her like her own daughter, giving her everything she wanted. Although Stephen appeared cold on the outside, he was particularly attentive to her, gifting her a custom piece of jewelry every birthday. And during gatherings, he would serve her tea in front of everyone, pampering her into the little princess of the circle. Since childhood, her dream has been to become Stephen's bride, so she arrogantly drove away all the girls around Stephen. She only waited to marry him after her 23rd birthday, but despite her vigilance day and night, she still couldn't guard against Laura. She is a scholarship student funded by the Law family, and because she resembles Stephen's deceased younger sister, she is very favored by Stephen. Out of love for him, she also learned to be kind to Laura. For Laura's birthday gift that she wanted Stephen to give her, she accepted. It thundered in the sky, and Laura wanted to fall asleep in Stephen's arms. She endured, until one day, after getting drunk, she found herself disheveled, writhing on Stephen's body, unable to hold back any longer. In the midst of a fierce argument, she screamed hysterically, but Stephen struck her across the face. If you can't stand it, just call off the engagement. As her thoughts returned, she trembled. In the struggle for her life, Her mind was filled with a blinding whiteness. And suddenly, a woman who looked exactly like her appeared. The woman took her hand and said she would save her, as long as she agreed to marry someone else in her place. At the brink of life and death, she agreed. Seeing her stunned and not speaking, Stephen rubbed his forehead, his tone impatient. Are you even listening to me? I am. Jasmine bit her lip and nodded. Okay, I promise you. Stephen was confused. Promise me what? Laura also nervously glanced at Stephen. Jasmine, do you want to take a break? Calmly shaking off her hand, Jasmine raised her gaze to Stephen, speaking each word with utmost seriousness. I promise you I will break off the engagement. As she opened her mouth, a metallic taste filled her mouth. She wiped it with the back of her hand, revealing a hint of seductive red at the corner of her lips. Stephen was taken aback, seemingly not hearing what she was saying. It was just that he was angry that day because Laura was injured and said he wanted to break off the engagement. But now, hearing her agree to break off the engagement, he felt an inexplicable bitterness rise in his heart. He furrowed his brow and asked her, Are you really willing to do that? Jasmine pulled at the corners of her mouth, not responding. Stephen frowned. Actually, everything I said that day was out of anger. You don't have to take it seriously. You don't need to comfort me anymore. Jasmine interrupted him. What I said wasn't out of anger. I am serious. I am breaking off the engagement, and I will bear all the consequences myself. Stephen didn't know that she could no longer marry him. According to the contract, she must marry another man. From now on, Jasmine and Stephen will not interfere with each other's lives. He can be with whoever he wants. It has nothing to do with her anymore. You're just throwing a tantrum again. Stephen unhesitatingly picked her up and took her to the infirmary. By the time the ship's doctor hurried over from the banquet, she had already developed a high fever. Before administering the fever-reducing injection, the doctor asked if she was allergic to penicillin. She opened her mouth but coughed up a pool of blood. It turned out that, while soaking in the cold, biting water, she bit her own tongue to stay awake. Just now, when standing, she could still swallow, but now lying in bed, the blood in her mouth is almost suffocating her. You're hurt so badly. Why didn't you say something sooner? Glancing at Stephen, he looked anxious and restless. Jasmine suddenly laughed sarcastically, but as she pulled her mouth, blood spilled all over her. She did want to say something, but did anyone ever give her a chance? In the past, he was most annoyed by her chattering beside him, but now that she said she wanted to break off the engagement, he instead started to care about her. Stephen furrowed his brow, feeling somewhat regretful as he lowered his head, sitting on the edge of the bed and taking her hand to assure her, Don't worry, I'll have the captain turn the ship around right now, and we'll go back. Once we're on land, I'll take you to the best hospital for treatment. After saying this, he had the ship's doctor give her an antipyretic injection, then contacted the captain to order him to turn the ship back. This cruise ship was specially chartered by him to report on the New Year's Eve party. And now, suddenly turning back halfway through the event left everyone in shock. Stephen, I feel so dizzy. Laura swayed a bit. Struggling to stand, Stephen quickly released Jasmine's hand, stepping forward to catch her, his eyes instantly reddening. Laura, are you seasick? Laura looked up, forcing herself to meet Stephen's gaze. I'm fine, Stephen. It's just that I had a fever for a month back then and have some after effects. Stephen's eyes darkened, filled with tenderness. I told you not to come along, but you just wouldn't listen. But I wanted to celebrate New Year's with you. Laura's face grew increasingly red. Stephen, you don't need to worry about me. There's just one dose of fever-reducing medicine on this boat. Hurry and give it to Jasmine. I'm not important. Stephen hurriedly stopped the ship's doctor. No, give Laura the shot first. The doctor stated that Jasmine's condition is much more serious than Laura's. The patient is already close to a 40-degree fever. If we don't give her the injection soon, she might suffer brain damage. But Stephen didn't care. She's just pretending. She used to love faking illness, and her goal was to get my attention. Now, I command you to treat Laura first. He yanked Jasmine off the bed and picked up Laura. Now, fix Laura immediately. Jasmine was thrown to the ground, her head hitting the bed frame hard, and suddenly the ship began to sway, causing her to roll into the corner. The photos and oil paintings hanging on the wall suddenly fell and crashed down on her, and she let out a faint groan, but no one paid attention. Fortunately, the captain quickly returned to the port, and an ambulance arrived immediately, but the stretcher carrying Jasmine was blocked by Stephen. "Send Laura first." The doctors dared not disobey him. After all, this hospital was run by the Law family. When it was Jasmine's turn, the doctor found that she was already unconscious, with bruises all over her body, and suspected suffocation. They forcibly pried open her mouth, hurriedly extracted the blood from her oral cavity, then registered the antipyretic, and carefully used tweezers to remove the shards of glass that had embedded in her body bit by bit. After dawn, she was pushed out of the emergency room and sent to the inpatient center. Stephen stayed up all night watching Laura, feeling confused as he saw Jasmine wrapped in white gauze. Isn't it just a fever? How could it lead to encephalitis? Why is she wrapped up like a mummy? What are you doctors even doing? What use is it to have you all raised by the Law family? Laura weakened, leaned on Stephen, saying, "Calm down. They all know Jasmine. Whatever Jasmine asks them to do, they can only do it. It's not easy for them either." Stephen let out a cold snort. This is the Law family's territory. She really thinks too highly of herself. Does she truly believe I won't call off the engagement? Laura's eyes lit up, wrapping her arms around his waist. Of course, this is Stephen's decision, but the wedding is a matter for the parents to decide. Stephen's expression darkened, and he fell silent. His mom liked Jasmine the most. When he initially opposed the arranged marriage, he went on a hunger strike for 3 days, but his mom still took Jasmine shopping, saying Jasmine had a precious fate, and that the Law family was not worthy of her. He does not deny Jasmine is the most beautiful woman he has ever seen, but she is too spoiled. He needs to suppress her and make her understand who is the master of this house. Before Jasmine was sent to the hospital, she was taken away by Stephen's bodyguard. She was placed in the attic of the villa. Stephen stood coldly by her bedside, staring at her. "You really are delicate. Laura was hospitalized after a month of fever, yet you fell ill so severely after just one night. It wasn't until the nurse helped her turn over that they discovered the blood had already soaked through the gauze. When it was removed, the gauze was stuck to her flesh, and there wasn't a single good patch of skin on her entire body." Stephen had red eyes and hurriedly took out his mobile phone to contact the specialist for a consultation. Laura stood outside the door, took out a red envelope, and stuffed it into their pockets. "Jasmine looks like a ghost. It's probably not going to get better. From now on, I will be the future young mistress of the Law family, so you all need to think carefully about what you say and do. I want you to tell him that Jasmine is self-harming, that the encephalitis is a misdiagnosis, and that everything was arranged by her to force you to do this. Understand?" The heads of several different departments spoke in unison, saying that the injuries on Jasmine were self-inflicted, and even the fever and encephalitis were diagnosed under her coercion. "The purpose is to make you feel heartache." Laura shed a few tears at the right moment. "Stephen, I didn't expect you to have been living in the carefully woven lies of her. Jasmine doesn't love you at all. She only has her eyes on your identity as the heir of the Law family, so she will stop at nothing to get you. Stephen, don't be so sad. I know you have feelings for her, but how did Jasmine treat you? Did she ever have genuine feelings for you?" Finally, she pressed alluringly on his heart. "Don't you want to know why she immediately brought up the idea of breaking off the engagement after getting out of the pool?" The 2 words "break off engagement" felt like a heavy punch to his heart. Stephen immediately pushed through the crowd, forcefully tearing the gauze off Jasmine's body, then picked her up and threw her into the bathroom. He had the nanny bring ice cubes and poured them all over her. Jasmine kept her eyes tightly shut, feeling an unbearable cold surrounding her. In her mind, a month ago, Laura pleaded with her to accompany her to the deserted island. She deliberately let the small boat drift away and hurriedly swam after it. By the time she returned, Laura was gone. She was frantic, searching the entire island but still found no trace of her. She could only return alone to report it to the police. But when she returned, She saw Laura collapsed in Stephen's arms. She approached to check on her condition, but was pushed away by Stephen. That look of disgust. She has never forgotten. For the past month, Stephen had not spoken a word to her as punishment. Suddenly, on this New Year's Eve, he sent a message saying to meet at the swimming pool. She deliberately dressed up, putting on the tight dress he had given her. But the next second she saw him and Laura embracing by the pool. In fact, she has been afraid of water since childhood. Because Stephen likes swimming, she had no choice but to force herself to learn how to swim. In the moment she fell into the water, she forgot to struggle. Her mind was filled with images of her fiancé kissing someone else sweetly. Her heart ached painfully. Unable to breathe, she opened her mouth wide, only to find that she was on the verge of suffocating. Help! Stephen! Save me! She thought this in her heart, but the water choked her, preventing her from speaking. Stephen, I will never love you again. I will let you go. When this thought appeared in her mind, her consciousness began to fade. After being rescued by the staff, she would immediately annul her engagement with him upon reaching the shore. All right, Jasmine, you've grown some skills. Suddenly, she jolted awake, her eyes wide open. Looking down, she saw herself completely naked, covered in ice, while Stephen was staring at her intently. Stephen, I will make way for you and Laura. From now on, let's not see each other again. It's unclear which words provoked Stephen. He gripped her neck tightly, his deep-set eyes filled with rage. Do you even know what you're saying? I only see her as a sister. By saying that, you are insulting her and me. Even though my whole body was covered in ice, the piercing pain did not lessen at all. The places where the glass had pierced were throbbing, as if countless little bugs were gnawing at my body. My neck was gripped so tightly that the feeling of suffocation surged once again to my heart. I opened my mouth and unexpectedly spat out a mouthful of blood. Blood flowed Stephen all over his hands, and he panicked. What's going on? Didn't you say you were faking illness? Jasmine pulled at the corner of her mouth. But this kind of attitude seemed like a provocation to Stephen. His bony fingers loosened and then tightened again, gripping her chin. What do you mean you don't want to see me again? You love me so much. How can you live without me? Jasmine tilted her head, but her whole body felt weak. Jasmine, you're not having a fight with Stephen because of me, are you? At first, I wanted to break off the engagement with him, but seeing how he cared for me, I self-harmed to make him pity you. So many doctors can testify that you have no illness at all. Now that Stephen is treating you so well, why won't you treat him well in return? Stephen smirked, exuding an aura of wanting to tear her apart. You insist on breaking off the engagement. Have you already found someone else? Jasmine felt a stir in her heart and turned her head away. Seeing her icy demeanor, Stephen suddenly laughed, releasing his grip on her chin. With a smirk, whether to break off the engagement is not for you to decide. Jasmine, you don't have that right. She tugged at the corner of her mouth. Hearing Stephen say this, she lost the desire to argue. In the past, every time she advised him, he grew closer to Laura. Moreover, he had always treated her explanations as if they were just the wind passing by. Thinking of this, she gave a self-deprecating smile. Yes, you are right. You. Stephen was furious, looking down at her with disdain, gritting his teeth and storming off. Laura waved her hand to dismiss the doctors, personally pouring him a cup of hot tea. Stephen, you know Jasmine's temper. When I used to accept your family's support, she even scolded me for being shameless. Stephen looked even more uncomfortable, sneering sarcastically. What gives her the right to look down on you? Isn't she just a little better off than you? We're all spoiled, with the flaws of a wealthy young lady. Laura wiped away a few tears at the right moment and, with a nasal tone, tried to comfort him. All right, Stephen, it's not worth getting angry for my sake. It's just that Jasmine really has a terrible temper. I think you should just break off the engagement and marry someone with a better temperament. Before she could finish her sentence, she was interrupted by Stephen. Whether or not to break off the engagement is up to me. He smirked sarcastically, the corners of his lips curling up slightly, his eyes softening a bit. Jasmine is just stubborn on the outside but soft on the inside. She was just saying things in anger, so there's no need to take it seriously. Besides, her dream since childhood has been to marry me, so how could she really want to break off the engagement? She has waited 23 years just to marry me, and in a few days it will be her birthday. She wouldn't be foolish enough to really fall out with me now. Moreover, I can see that she has been through enough this time. Maybe tomorrow she will come to her senses and come back to beg me not to leave her. I have to say, Laura, your method is quite effective. I've noticed that Jasmine has been much more restrained lately, but when he closed his eyes, what filled his mind was the sight of blood everywhere, along with a pair of indifferent eyes. His heart felt as if it had been tightly squeezed, a little sour and a little painful. Laura bit her lip, her hand holding the teacup feeling a bit sore. She pushed the cup forward, her warm breath brushing against Stephen's chest. But Jasmine, the phone vibrated, and Stephen leaned back on the sofa, lowering his gaze to swipe the screen. Brother, the custom wedding dress is ready. Would you like to come and take a look? He smirked. I have something to attend to. Stephen, let me get you another cup of tea. Aw, it's so hot. Stephen stood up without noticing, and the scalding tea splashed all over Laura. Stephen's pupils dilated in shock, and he hurriedly took out a handkerchief to wipe the tea off her, only to see that her fair skin was already red and swollen, with cuts all over her arms from the broken porcelain. Stephen, you don't need to worry about me. Just do your thing. I'm not in pain. You're covered in wounds. How could you not be in pain? The ambulance arrived, and the nurse helped to treat the wound, making an excuse to go to the bathroom to wash her hands. After a sharp scream, several nurses hurriedly carried the unconscious Jasmine out. Quick, notify them to bring a stretcher. The kind nurse covered Jasmine with a blanket, and Laura arrived, giving them red envelopes and threatening that no one could tell Stephen. You all know that I am Stephen's true love. This Jasmine is just a marriage alliance. Even if something happens to her, it will only make Stephen angry. So none of you can leak a word. Laura, are you really okay? A tense voice from outside the door. Stephen called out. No, I'm almost fine. It's just Jasmine. Don't mind her. Laura whispered with a laugh. See, Stephen doesn't care about Jasmine at all. After saying that, she proudly pushed the door open, but several nurses couldn't just stand by and watch. In the hospital, Jasmine had developed a high fever, with shadows in her lungs. Her entire body was covered in sores, and the supervisors who received bonuses all shirked their responsibilities. Fortunately, the intern doctor was unaware and still devotedly treated her. Stephen took the wedding dress home, but couldn't find Jasmine anywhere, only to learn that she had gone to the hospital. Her entire body was wrapped in thick gauze, leaving only her mouth and one arm exposed. Stephen furrowed his brow. What's wrong with her eyes? Mr. Law, MS. Jasmine said she doesn't want to see anyone. Let's cover our eyes together. Stephen felt a sinking sensation in his heart. Doesn't want to see anyone, including him? Bastard! Do you just listen to whatever she says? As long as we're not married. She's not Mr. Law. It's truly ridiculous. They were already engaged. Yet it was Stephen who brought her to the hospital, introducing her to the staff as his fiancée, asking everyone to respect her as they would respect him. But just because of Laura, her status has plummeted. She turned her head away, pretending not to hear. Stephen's expression was somewhat gloomy. When will you change your spoiled princess ways? Even lying in a hospital bed, your temper is still so foul. Jasmine remained silent, and without seeing her face, Stephen felt a bit anxious inside. Forget it. I won't argue with a patient like you. He sat down and secretly glanced at Jasmine, feeling a twinge of pity in his heart. Does it hurt? She didn't say a word. Jasmine, do you realize your mistake? Actually, I didn't want to punish you. It's just that you shouldn't have treated Laura as a rival. I only see her as a sister. The person in my arms moved slightly but did not respond. A wave of bitterness filled my nostrils. Pushing away Stephen's hand, her slightly hoarse voice caught in her throat. No need to explain. Actually, I don't care anymore. What do you mean no need? It's not you who has been sick for a month. Seeming to realize he had misspoken, Stephen paused. lowered his head to persuade her, his tone softening a bit. Actually, you have been punished too. Just acknowledge your mistakes and move on. In a few days, it's your birthday, and we will hold a... He hadn't finished speaking when Jasmine interrupted and said, I'm not in a hurry to get married. Upon hearing this, Stephen's face turned completely dark. You're not in a hurry to get married? You've been looking forward to it for 23 years. Everything is ready. And now you tell me you're not in a hurry? Jasmine, you're angry again. Angry that I punished you for Laura. So you deliberately said that, didn't you? Is everything really ready? What she once longed for the most was to be his bride. But now, the word marriage only gives her a splitting headache. She tugged at the corner of her lips, feeling that for 23 years, her infatuation with Stephen, this biased and foolish man, had been nothing short of a disaster. I've already picked up the wedding dress. In a couple of days, we're taking wedding photos, and you must discharge me. After leaving these few words, he walked away without looking back. Not long after he left, Law's mom came over. She had no mother. Law's mom had watched her grow up since childhood, and their bond as mother and daughter surpassed any future mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relationship. Hearing Law's mom's voice, tears instantly soaked the gauze. Come on, quickly take off the gauze that's blocking Jasmine's eyes. She hugged Jasmine comfortingly, saying, Child, you've suffered. When I get home, I will make Stephen kneel and confess to you. Mom not only treated her better than her own son but also helped her deal with the flocks of admirers around Stephen Law. But later, after meeting Laura, who looked strikingly similar to her deceased daughter, she softened and even encouraged Jasmine to treat Laura as a sister. But now, seeing Jasmine lying on the hospital bed, lifeless, she broke down in tears. Compared to Laura, Jasmine was the daughter she had raised since childhood. There was no blood relation, but she was closer than a biological daughter. Sandra regretted in her heart, thinking she shouldn't have neglected Jasmine for a stranger. So, she specially arranged a birthday dinner 5 days later, planning to publicly give her family heirloom to her that day, and even arranged for Stephen to propose on the spot, with the wedding the very next day. My Jasmine, it's all Mom's fault. Take care of your injuries and don't overthink it. Your mother will handle the rest for you. Sandra directly summoned all the doctors who had treated Jasmine to the ward, her face cold as she questioned them one by one. We law raise you all to treat illnesses and save lives, but you can't even cure your future boss lady. She called for Jasmine's medical records, studied them carefully, and slammed her hand on the table with a bang. Well, the medical records for Jasmine are written so vaguely. What on earth are you all doing? Open them all up. We law can't afford to keep you. Leave only this intern doctor. The rest of you get lost. Sandra comes from a family of doctors. This hospital is her dowry, which is why she is the rightful owner of the hospital. It's not us. It's Miss Laura who made us do this. Hearing Laura's name, Sandra gritted her teeth. I heard she has been restless lately. I didn't expect her to learn such underhanded tricks. Laura intended to mock Jasmine for a moment, but when she overheard their conversation by the door, she was startled and didn't have time to leave before the sharp-eyed butler spotted her. Miss Laura is over there. Hearing this, Sandra quickly had someone bring her in. Kneel down. Laura's face turned pale as she was made to kneel in front of everyone, especially in front of this group of doctors she had once flaunted her power over. She simply couldn't bring herself to lose face. Unbeknownst to her, someone kicked her, and with her knees giving way, she fell to the ground in front of the hospital bed. Meeting Jasmine's calm gaze, a surge of hatred welled up within her. Quick, apologize to Jasmine. A trace of malice flickered in Laura's eyes. Her hands, which had been supporting her on the ground, clenched tightly together, the freshly done nails digging into her flesh. Mom, with a loud slap, a backhand landed on Laura's face. Sandra let out a cold snort. I am not your mother. You are just a poor student that our law family has sponsored. Your mother is still in the mountains farming. If it weren't for Jasmine being kind and saying she would sponsor you, you would have been sold off in the village as a bride by now. How could you be living so comfortably today? A murmur spread around, and the looks directed at her were filled with disdain. Laura gritted her teeth and swallowed her anger. Mister, this whole body of injuries isn't my doing. As soon as the words fell, 5 clear fingerprints appeared on her face. Isn't it clear to you in your heart? If it weren't for you stirring things up, Stephen, how could you possibly let Jasmine wear a mermaid costume and soak her in cold water for an entire night? If it weren't for you, how could Jasmine end up so injured? If it weren't for you stuffing these ungrateful wretches with red envelopes, how would they dare treat Jasmine this way? You designed to frame Jasmine, and you also deliberately delayed Jasmine's treatment. What exactly are you plotting? The butler raised his hand again, but after a few attempts, he couldn't move it. Turning around, he found himself blocked by Stephen. He was still holding a thermos. You must be out of your mind to dare hit Laura. At this moment, Laura's eyes were filled with tears as she cried at Stephen's feet. Stephen, my biggest wish before I die was to see you one more time. And now you've finally come. Die? Stephen helped Laura up with one hand. Seeing her flushed cheeks, his expression froze. Don't be angry with Mr. It's Jasmine who hates me. She can't stand me. But even if I die, I don't want to leave you. Stephen quickly walked to Jasmine's bedside and placed the thermos down. Smack! The crisp sound of a slap stunned everyone in the room and interrupted Laura's unfinished words. Jasmine turned her head away from the slap and fell onto the hospital bed. Sandra never expected that her own son would actually hit Jasmine. She gritted her teeth, reached out her hand, and even jumped up. Using all her strength, with a loud smack, Stephen stumbled back. Well, Stephen, how dare you bully Jasmine in front of me? I'm going to fight you. Is there anything wrong with me standing up for Laura against you two bullying her? You, wretched child, you are not worthy of Jasmine. Fine, since you say I'm unworthy, then we won't get married. Stephen's eyes turned red, and the veins on his forehead bulged. He suddenly pulled Laura into his arms and kissed her. In the shocked gazes of the crowd, he smirked and provocatively looked at Jasmine on the hospital bed. Are you satisfied now? Laura was extremely shy, gently pressing her delicate hand against his chest. Stephen, how could you kiss me? I kiss whoever I like. Get me out of here. Get me out. Sandra couldn't stand the commotion. She called security to have Stephen and Laura removed. As the farce came to an end, she patted her chest to calm herself and finally noticed that Jasmine had one side of her face swollen high, tears silently gathering and falling from her delicate chin. Her heart suddenly ached. I'm sorry, Jasmine. I couldn't protect you. When your mother entrusted you to me, I vowed to let you live a carefree life for the rest of your days. I originally thought my son could take care of Jasmine for a lifetime, but now it seems this son is as foolish as a pig. He actually couldn't see through Laura's scheme and treated Jasmine so harshly. Mom, although they are not married, she is grateful for her nurturing and has always called Sandra Mom. I have no fate with him. Good child, don't cry. When you cry, Mom feels like crying too. She cried, not for him, but because her years of sincere love felt worthless. Sandra wiped her tears and choked out. Your mother was my best friend when she was alive. In fact, you have a twin sister, but unfortunately, she passed away young, leaving you all alone. Jasmine blinked her big, wet eyes, slightly taken aback. As she struggled to survive in the pool, she saw a woman who looked exactly like her. It was her twin sister. They say twins have a psychic connection. She clutched her chest, her heart racing. Not only did her sister save her, but she also arranged for her to marry another man in her place. This marriage must be annulled. Stephen's grandma saw the slap mark on her grandson's face. Her eyes filled with heartache. She was furious and, leaning on her cane, was determined to seek justice for him. Your mother is just too indulgent with that girl. She's not even related to us. Yet based on her past connections, she's raising someone else's child, delaying my law family's growth. Now, she even strikes her own son for her. This is outrageous. Laura quickly knelt down. Grandma, it's all Laura's fault. If it weren't for Laura, Stephen wouldn't have punished Jasmine, and Jasmine wouldn't have gotten so angry as to cause a scene with Mr. So all the blame lies with me. A harmonious family leads to prosperity. Please don't be angry. Law Grandma squinted her eyes, sizing up Laura, seeing her small face swollen and bruised. Her tone softened. The whole Law family is most concerned about you, Laura. You are too well-behaved and understanding. I think you are 100 times better than that willful and spoiled Jasmine. Upon hearing this, Laura lowered her head, a smile tugging at her lips, but the next sentence made her still-forming smile freeze instantly. Unfortunately, your background is a bit lacking. Otherwise, I would definitely match you with Steven. Laura was taken aback, her eyes shifting as she changed the subject. But Jasmine, what should we do? Her birthday is in a few days. Law Grandma's expression darkened. What birthday? Immediately have those people take down the decorations. If we keep indulging her like this, the Law family will be at the mercy of this little girl. We can't skip it. Although Steven was angry, he couldn't help but plead with Grandma upon hearing about the cancellation of the birthday party. Grandma, the Law family is certainly under your authority, but Jasmine's birthday still needs to be celebrated. It's something she's been looking forward to for a long time. Since it's my decision, then just listen to me. It's just a birthday. What difference does it make? It's not like anyone's going to die from it. Law Grandma was furious, feeling frustrated that her efforts were in vain, and she struck the cane against the ground with a loud bang. Steven, look at yourself. You seem so distracted. I can see your soul has been taken away by that Jasmine. From today on, without my permission, you are not allowed to see her again. Laura, I don't know when, knelt at Law Grandma's feet, massaging her legs. It's all my fault. Grandma, if you want to lock me up, go ahead. But you can't keep Steven locked up all the time. After all, this is the Law home. Steven, a dignified CEO, feels uncomfortable in his own house. If this gets out, people will laugh their heads off. Grandma Law furrowed her brows, while Laura continued to strategize. How about we send Jasmine back to the Inn family first? I heard that although her mother is no longer around, her father is still alive. They haven't seen each other in so many years. They must miss each other very much. No way! As soon as he heard that Jasmine was to be sent away, Steven was the first to disagree. Why not? I think this idea is great. Let's do it! Law Grandma seems to have made up her mind. Steven, look at yourself. You are wholeheartedly trying to do good for that girl. But what about her? She has been spoiled by you and your mother to the point of being uncontrollable. In the past, I turned a blind eye to her jealousy, but this time she nearly caused Laura to lose her life. When it comes to feelings and human life, which is more important? You should weigh it yourself. After saying this, she had someone help her to rest. Steven still wanted to argue, but Laura stopped him. Steven, don't provoke Grandma. She has trouble walking, and after her stroke last time, the doctor advised that she shouldn't be upset. It was like a punch hitting cotton. Steven gritted his teeth, letting out a grunt, and his gaze towards Laura held a hint of suspicion. Why did you send Jasmine back? I did all this for you. Laura's eyes instantly turned red. Otherwise, Grandma wouldn't let Jasmine go. Sending her home is just a temporary measure. Once Grandma cools down, you can bring her back again, and then you can do whatever you want with her. I misunderstood you. Steven let out a sigh of relief, feeling a bit guilty as he reached up to touch Laura's swollen face. Does it still hurt? I'll have someone bring you some ice to put on it. As soon as the mobile phone rang, the photo appeared on Jasmine's phone. Steven bowed his head, holding the woman's face in his hands, his eyes filled with heartache. Did you see? Steven loves me the most. Even if you died, he wouldn't spare you a glance. Just a few minutes ago, Sandra received a phone call and hurriedly left, reassuring her to take good care of herself. In fact, she heard it. On the phone, Law's grandma was being extremely sarcastic and mocking towards her. Law's grandma was already dissatisfied with Sandra when she lost her child and adopted her. Law's grandma was 1000% against it. She said that even if she raised her, she still wanted to return to an home, saying, it would be better to have another one. Only biological children will be considerate. Sandra obediently got pregnant, gave birth, and her daughter died young. Law's grandma insisted that it was her adopting children that disrupted her own children's fortune. and she wanted to send her away. But Sandra was unwilling. From then on, La's grandma vented all her anger about the Law family's inability to expand onto Sandra and Jasmine. Laura glanced at the man sleeping beside her. Stephen had just drunk the tea she made and was sleeping soundly. She lowered her head and stared intently at her phone, suddenly feeling a bit guilty. In the past, whenever she provoked Jasmine, she would always retaliate immediately. But this time, she was just too calm to the point of unease. Laura comforted herself, thinking that as long as Jasmine was sent back to an home, she would be treated by her father as a gift to appease the old man. That old man was clearly on his last legs. Sending her over would only mean she would be left as a widow. By then, it would be too late, and she would no longer be able to marry Stephen. Lost in thought, she secretly felt pleased and sent Jasmine several photos of herself lying in Stephen's arms. While the nurse was changing the dressing, Jasmine was still staring at her phone, biting her lips so hard that she didn't even notice the pain. "Miss Jasmine, if you feel any pain, just say something. It doesn't hurt. Law, this is an imported gel. Once applied, your skin will heal quickly. Law specifically acquired this company for you. He cares about you so much." Jasmine lowered her eyes, gave a self-deprecating smile, and did not respond. In a daze, someone lifted her into a car, and when she woke up, she found herself lying in an unfamiliar place. A man claiming to be her father is taking care of her. "Get away! I don't have a father like you." "Jasmine, how can you speak to an uncle like that? Why are you still so disrespectful?" Stephen's expression darkened. It seemed she still hadn't learned her lesson. He stared at Jasmine, each word forceful. "Quickly apologized to an uncle. It's fine. A father and daughter don't hold grudges overnight." Jasmine was just frightened. "With me here, you can feel free to leave." Jasmine's father was all smiles, rubbing his hands as he looked into Jasmine's eyes, a glint flashing like that of a predator eyeing its trapped prey. "No, I can't stay here." Jasmine struggled to fall off the sofa, knowing that her father was cold-blooded. Otherwise, he wouldn't have ignored her for so many years. She crawled on the ground, gripping Stephen's pants, raising her head to plead with him. "Please take me away." Her intuition was very bad. Just now, her father's gaze at her was like looking at a commodity waiting for a price. Stephen's expression was complicated. He reached out his hand to help Jasmine up, but was grasped by Laura in the process. "Stephen, Jasmine is feeling shy about returning home. We shouldn't disturb their father-daughter reunion here." "But Jasmine," Laura deliberately whispered in Stephen's ear. "Jasmine, she has a thin skin and is stubborn. Once we leave, they will naturally reconcile. And when Uncle N shows up at the wedding, won't that resolve Jasmine's concern?" Just thinking about Uncle N approving of this marriage, Grandma couldn't refuse Anne's family's face. By then, his marriage to Jasmine would be a done deal. Stephen nodded, his eyes showing a hint of appreciation. "Laura, if it weren't for you, I really wouldn't know what to do." The two people were very close together, looking like a young couple flirting. Jasmine was momentarily stunned, loosening her grip on Stephen's hand, lowering her head, unable to see her expression. "Jasmine, I still have to hurry home to take care of Grandma and look after Mom, so Stephen and I will leave first." Hearing Sandra's name, her heart softened. "Take good care of Mom for me." "Do I even need to say that?" Stephen snorted coldly, getting angrier the more he thought about it. "If it weren't for you, would she be arguing with Grandma? Getting emotional, her old problems flaring up again. Isn't it all your fault?" "What? I need to go see her." In her world, the two most important people are Stephen and Sandra. She struggled to stand up but was hugged back onto the sofa by Stephen. "You are not allowed to go anywhere. Stay here and reflect properly." Jasmine had a pale, haggard face, her eyes red and swollen, her whole body weak and fragile, like a delicate porcelain doll. Stephen suddenly felt that his words were a bit harsh. At that moment, the mobile phone rang, and Laura panicked. "What? Did Mr. faint?" Jasmine felt a tightness in her heart, nervously looking at Stephen, her big eyes revealing a plea. Stephen merely cast her a complex glance and pulled Laura away. Bang! The door closed. Jasmine closed her eyes, but heard her father take out his phone, a flattering expression on his face. Okay. In a few days. Cash on delivery. During her days at an S house, she was placed in the attic on the top floor. Diego was afraid she would run away, so he added another lock. It was only opened when the nurse came to change the dressings. For several days, there was no sign of Stephen until his birthday, when he had someone deliver a wedding dress. The wedding dress was designed by the two of them together, with lace flowers on the skirt representing their birth flowers, and the gemstones on the belt taken from the custom jewelry Stephen sent her every year, a total of 23 stones, symbolizing their 23 years of relationship. Also delivered was a dazzling little crown, which she had casually mentioned was beautiful, and Stephen remembered it, especially flying to Canada to take a picture of it. She suddenly remembered that the original Stephen was very good to her. He truly is cherishing her with all his heart. Even this wedding dress took nearly a year to complete, crafted meticulously by a French luxury brand artisan, stitch by stitch, without sparing any expense. As long as she says she doesn't like any girl around him, he will obediently keep his distance. But when did he change? Perhaps it was from the moment he saw Laura that his eyes were no longer solely on her. I said, I only regard her as a sister. He became increasingly impatient with her, and in the end, the two simply stopped talking and began a cold war. Even if Mom tries to mediate, Stephen won't listen, instead choosing to go wild with Laura outside. The event he should have taken her to. He took Laura instead. The affection that should have belonged to her, he gave to another woman. Now, he has hurt her time and again. What exactly did she do wrong? Isn't it just because she loves him? Since this love has left her battered and bruised, it would be better to just let it go, drowning in the icy water. No matter how she struggles, it is all in vain. Before dying, her twin sister gave her a moment of telepathy. Sister, I want you to live for me, to marry the man I love. She refused, even on the brink of death. She only loved Stephen. The woman sneered. Silly sister, you are about to die, but your beloved is out there enjoying life with someone else. Does he even know you are in danger? Has he come to save you? Moreover, your danger was brought about by him in the first place. It was unclear which words pierced Jasmine's heart, but she suddenly woke up. Stephen did not love her as much as she had imagined. Want to die? It's not that easy. You have to live. That's what you owe me. Jasmine felt someone push her hard, and she instinctively reached out her hand, being yanked up onto the shore. Suddenly opening her eyes, she realized the nurse had just finished administering her medication and was about to turn to leave. Miss, could you please pour me a glass of water? Jasmine seized the opportunity while the nurse turned around and swung the chair down violently. I'm sorry. Her mobile phone had been confiscated and locked away in the attic. Now was her only chance to escape. The wounds on her body have mostly healed. She quickly put on the nurse's uniform. When she opened the door, she glanced back at the gift box on the table, then looked at the stainless steel scissors on the tray, narrowing her eyes. Since love is no longer pure, there is no need to commemorate it. Stephen was sitting on the sofa, feeling inexplicably anxious. He squeezed his mobile phone and sent a message to the pinned chat, but no one replied for a long time. After hesitating for a moment, he called, but still no one answered. Today is her birthday. He sent someone to deliver the wedding dress, and the implication was already very clear. He had already given her a way out, but she was still throwing a tantrum. As she grabbed her clothes and was about to leave, Laura suddenly walked over, swaying and collapsing into Stephen's arms. Seeing Laura exhausted, Stephen felt a pang of guilt in his heart. Jasmine is not here, and both Mom and Grandma are sick. It has really been tough on you lately. Your family is my family, and I will definitely take good care of them. Don't worry too much about Jasmine. She hasn't replied because she must still be angry. You should go and comfort her. Hearing this, Stephen gritted his teeth and let out a cold snort, throwing away the coat he had been holding. Whether she loves to come back or not, it's better if she doesn't come back. On the other side, the nurse, wearing a mask, carried a dressing tray downstairs, moving smoothly. As the ambulance passed by Law's mansion, she didn't even lift her head. She was even a bit curious. What would Stephen's reaction be when he discovers the wedding dress she had cut to shreds? Marco's old house. A young woman stood at the entrance. She swayed slightly. Already thin, she now wore something so light it seemed she might faint. Marco was first taken aback, then tightly embraced her. His usually steady voice mixed with a hint of sobbing. "Rose, I can't be dreaming, right?" On the other side, Stephen was about to go crazy. Time rewinds a few hours. After drinking a cup of tea Laura had brought him, he felt drowsy, and when he woke up, he found a naked woman lying next to him. Just then, Sandra pushed the door open, saw him and Laura in disarray on the same bed, and was filled with rage. She grabbed a vase and threw it at the two. Stephen dodged just in time. The vase hit Laura, instantly leaving a gash on her head, blood streaming down. Stephen wanted to explain, but Sandra wouldn't listen to anything, angrily saying he was not worthy of Jasmine. "I declare this marriage engagement null and void." She couldn't bear to see Jasmine marry such a Stephen. Had she known her son was so heartless, she shouldn't have taken it upon herself to arrange their engagement. "No, the person I want to marry can only be Jasmine." Stephen shoved the woman in his arms away, put on his coat, and headed to an house. Laura held onto his waist tightly. "Stephen, my head hurts so much." Stephen gripped her chin, his eyes boiling with anger. "Laura, you better behave, or I'll make sure you go back to where you came from." After saying that, without caring about the woman's entanglement behind him, he immediately rushed out to Anne's house. He hadn't spoken much with Diego when he felt something was off. Hurrying upstairs, the attic was locked. Diego took a deep breath and ordered the butler to get the key to open the room. To his surprise, there was a person lying on the bed, tightly covered with a blanket and too afraid to show their face. Stephen opened the gift box only to find that the wedding dress inside had been cut to pieces. He felt a jolt in his heart. "Jasmine, no matter how angry you are, you shouldn't take it out on this wedding dress." Yet even so, he still suppressed his anger and tried to comfort her. After all, he had just done something to hurt her. "Jasmine, come out quickly. I'm here to take you away." Diego quietly wiped his sweat. "Stephen, Jasmine has a bad temper. You should go back first. I'll try to talk to her." The time for Ma to exchange money and people is approaching quickly. At this moment, we absolutely cannot let Stephen take the person away. What on earth is going on with Laura? How could she not keep an eye on the person? But Stephen, without saying a word, directly wrapped the person in a blanket and carried them downstairs. Diego wouldn't let him have his way, secretly extending his leg to trip him. But this fall left both Stephen and Diego greatly shocked. "You're not Jasmine. Where is Jasmine?" The two men almost shouted in unison. I am the nurse. While I was changing the dressing, Miss Jasmine knocked me out and escaped in my clothes." Diego frantically exclaimed. "Why didn't you say anything?" The nurse lowered her head, tears streaming down her face. "I shouted, but the door was locked." Stephen finally realized, furrowing his brow as he questioned Diego. "You imprisoned Jasmine?" "No. She is my biological daughter. How could I do such a thing?" It was the servants who locked the door out of fear she would run away. Diego retreated a few steps in guilt, and just then, his phone rang. "Sean Gu, is your daughter ready? My dad can't wait any longer." Before the person on the other end could finish speaking, a cold, almost frenzied voice was heard. "Prepare a burial suit for your dad. My Stephen's fiancé is also something you can covet." Realizing it was Stephen on the phone, the other party hurriedly hung up. In the circle, everyone knows that Stephen is a tough guy. At a young age, he established himself in the chaotic business world relying on one word: tough. At this point, Diego has no way to argue. He clasped his hands in prayer. "Stephen, I really have no way out. Otherwise I wouldn't resort to such disgraceful acts for profit. Why sell anyone else? But you set your sights on my fiancé? Can the Ma family give you more than the Law family can?" Diego didn't understand, trying to shirk responsibility. "But how could I tell that you truly liked my family, Jasmine? Haven't you punished her time and again? Don't you already have a Laura by your side? You've put my daughter through so much pain for her. And I haven't even asked you for an explanation yet." A few words made Stephen's previously sullen face turn oddly bright. Seeing him silent, Diego seemed to have grasped his weakness and straightened his back. "Stephen, since you are not good to my daughter, I will not beg to have her marry you. The marriage between our two families is hereby cancelled." "What's going on?" One after another, they want to break off the engagement. Stephen was almost going crazy. He suddenly stood up, grabbing Diego's collar, his cold gaze fixed on his face. "I said, Jasmine is my fiancée. If I can't marry her, no one else can." Diego was ordered to hand over all Jasmine's belongings. After taking out the mobile phone, he skillfully entered the password. What suddenly came into view was actually a photo of Laura lying in his arms. Stephen was stunned. Unsightly images and provocative words suddenly invaded his line of sight. He suddenly remembered that he had intentionally kissed Laura in the hospital room to provoke Jasmine. He vowed that he only wanted to annoy Jasmine. Just at midnight, this mobile phone received a new message. I opened the message, only to find a video of him and Laura engaging in intense activities. His face suddenly turned pale. His fingers were still trembling. Impossible. But the person in the video is clearly him. Laura. It was her doing this on purpose. Everything was done by her. Investigate. Find out where Jasmine went. If you can't find her, I'll make you Diego wish you were dead. Diego, fearing for his own safety, confessed everything. It was this woman pulling the strings in the middle. He pointed at Laura's photo and spilled all the details. She said you didn't like Jasmine, and that you treated Jasmine badly, and that you would never marry her. So I thought of finding a good match for Jasmine. She said Ma's old man is about to die, and he's looking for a woman of equal status to bring him good fortune at a high price. My company's cash flow has collapsed, which is why I took this risk. Stephen's head was buzzing. Those few short sentences made him feel faint. Laura looked at the mobile phone with some unease. The scheduled time has already passed, and I don't know if everything went smoothly over there. I should have clung to Stephen for a while longer. She felt uneasy, and as soon as she opened the door, she collided with a wall of flesh. "Where are you going?" Stephen furrowed his brow, looking as if he were holding back, yet also as if he might explode with anger at any moment. I'm going to see the doctor." The air suddenly fell silent. Stephen could smell a faint metallic scent of blood. Not enough. Laura seemed confused. She looked up and cautiously asked, "Stephen, what do you mean?" Her gaze was fixed tightly on the door. She had just taken a step forward when Stephen grabbed her and threw her onto the bed. "I said your injuries are not enough." "Stephen, what's wrong with you?" Laura was taken aback for a moment, quickly realizing that the man in front of her was radiating a chilling aura. Stephen looked at her coldly, his eyes no longer filled with the usual affection. "Ma, what is the deal with the family giving the old man a boost? Jasmine, how could there be such disgraceful things on her phone?" Every word he spoke made her scalp tighten a little more, and fear rose in her heart. "I don't know." A trace of coldness flickered in Stephen's eyes. In the next moment, he reached out and tightly gripped Laura's neck, with such force that there was no doubt this man would lose control and strangle her in his rage. Laura's breath caught, and she turned her head to try to evade. But how could she withstand the man's strength? I said. Stephen was filled with anger, and with a swift motion, he yanked the person off the bed. Laura fell to the ground with a thud, repeatedly bowing her head. "I heard that an uncle misses his daughter." Before she could finish her sentence, a foot suddenly kicked her down. Yes, it was me. I thought Diego was longing for his daughter, so I wanted to send Jasmine over to reunite them. The sharp pain in her fingers rendered her speechless. Stephen cruelly stepped on her delicate fingers with his ornate leather shoes, crouched down, and his eyes held no warmth. His long fingers gripped her chin tightly, staring for a long time before suddenly letting out a cold laugh. "Someone, take Laura back to her mother. Hasn't her family already arranged a marriage for her with that hunchbacked blind man from the east of the village?" "No." Laura immediately trembled like a leaf. "Stephen, don't send me back to the village. I'll say anything. I promise. It's me. I like you. That's why I impulsively sent Jasmine those kinds of photos. As for being sent to an S house for a wedding blessing, I had no idea at all. Diego hurried over. Seeing this scene, he took out a handkerchief to wipe his sweat. Fortunately, he had left evidence long ago. Otherwise, he would have to die for this woman. Law, sir, you listen. Every time this woman contacts me, I secretly recorded it. Here is the audio. He pressed the recorder, and clear conversations began to play. And uncle, the Ma family has offered to pay $100 million to buy Jasmine. Are you really not tempted? How could the Ma family give so much money? Stephen still hasn't touched Jasmine. A virgin is the most useful thing for a good fortune. The Ma family hopes the old man lives a long life, relying on his status and power to continue to dominate. Slap. Laura's face instantly swelled and bruised. She kept pleading with Stephen to spare her, but all that responded to her were the continuous slaps. Stephen's chest heaved violently, his overwhelming anger about to erupt at this moment. He radiated a hostility that could tear a person apart. What else is there that I don't know? Speak! The commotion escalated, alarming Sandra, who was recuperating upstairs. She got out of bed with the help of her nurse. As soon as she reached the doorway, she saw Laura being slapped repeatedly by Stephen. What's going on? Stephen was very affectionate towards Laura, even more than he was towards Jasmine. So how could he suddenly act like this? After listening for a while, she understood, especially when she heard that Jasmine was being given to old man for good luck by Diego and Laura. She was so angry that she almost rushed over to slap that woman herself. Madam, should we advise the young master? Her usually gentle face turned cold. No need to advise him. Let him hit. Let him know what a huge mistake he has made. Perhaps their conversation startled the people inside, and Stephen stopped. The burning sensation in his palm reminded him of how hard the slap had been. Laura, dazed from the blow, saw Sandra approaching through her blurred vision and hurriedly crawled over to beg for mercy. Mister, help me! Sandra, sneering, kicked her away, saying, "How come you, ungrateful wretch, weren't killed? If it weren't for Jasmine advocating for funding underprivileged students, how could you have possibly entered our family? Not only are you ungrateful, but you have repeatedly tried to frame Jasmine and sow discord between her and Stephen." Sandra let out a cold snort as she sat down by the bed, scolding Stephen with frustration. "You still don't know the truth about when Jasmine took that woman to the deserted island?" Stephen furrowed his brow. Could there really be something he didn't know? Sandra received the phone from the nanny, found a video, and handed it to him. "Take a good look. Your fake sister is how she framed Jasmine." Laura was taken aback. Impossible. That was a deserted island. How could there be surveillance? She had clearly checked that place multiple times. Her panic did not escape Sandra's eyes. "Are you wondering where there could be surveillance on the deserted island? Coincidentally, that day our law family's drone training was happening right above that island." Laura lunged forward to grab the mobile phone, but was kicked by Stephen against the wall, her head slamming hard into it. It turned out that the place where Sandra had injured her had cracked open again, instantly a bloody mess. Stephen looked at the video on the mobile phone with a shocked expression. The image was very clear. Jasmine was with Laura, the two of them sailing together to the deserted island. After landing, Jasmine tied the boat to a large rock, at which point Laura hid behind a big stone. Jasmine couldn't see anyone, first calling out a few times before hurriedly searching for them, while Laura came out, used a small knife to cut the ropes, and then hid again. Jasmine watched the boat drift away and hurriedly jumped into the sea to find it. Just as the rain began to fall from the sky, she was alone, swimming in the sea, the rain soaking her hair, and the sudden darkness left her feeling disoriented. Several waves surged in, instantly submerging her head. Watching Stephen furrowed his brow, his heart feeling as if it were gripped tightly by an invisible hand. Fortunately, she successfully found the boat. She could have sailed home, but instead, she turned the boat around and returned to the deserted island for Laura. And Laura took an unknown pill and rushed into the rain after meeting Jasmine. The pill Laura took is a new drug just developed by the hospital, and it's still in the experimental stage. How do I know this? Sandra looked at her shocked son and sighed. If you pay a little attention, you'll realize that no one can really have a fever for a month, right? That's just a side effect of the medication. How could this happen? Stephen felt his mind racing, his fists clenched involuntarily, nails digging deep into his palms. Only this could alleviate the pain and anger within him. Tie him up and hang him up. The bodyguard hurriedly hung the person up, only to be scolded by the arriving law grandma. My old lady isn't dead yet, and someone wants to hit my Laura? Laura was like a drowning person grasping at the last straw, crying for help. Grandma, if you don't come, I'm going to be beaten to death. Grandma, this is none of your business. Stephen gestured, and a group of bodyguards blocked Law Grandma. Faced with the embarrassment from her own grandson, Law Grandma's expression changed. Stephen, are you going to make things difficult for Laura again because of that Jasmine? She comes from a poor family, and she has only had a few good days since coming to our house. She is the most obedient and understanding, and she has filial piety. After my stroke, my legs are inconvenient, and this cane was given to me by her. Mom, Sandra interrupted her. You still don't know, do you? The child you think is the most obedient and sensible is actually a backstabber and a liar. Our family Jasmine was harmed by her. Sandra, as her daughter-in-law for decades, had always obeyed her. Although she had some dissatisfaction in the past, she had never openly resisted her like this before. Law. Grandma was so angry that she struck her cane loudly. Nonsense. But Sandra, deeply caring for Jasmine, hated Laura to the bone. She scoffed disdainfully. Mom, the dragon head cane you're using is embedded with emeralds. Just one alone is quite expensive. Laura was once a poor student. How could she possibly afford so much money? Law Grandma glanced down at her cane. Indeed, she had doubted before, but Laura had sweet-talked her into believing everything, and she even cooked traditional Chinese medicine for me, simmering it all night long. I took it for 30 days. Who among you can do that? Sandra pulled out her mobile phone to show her, a smirk on her lips. Mom, look, who is really making the herbal medicine? It's Jasmine. Jasmine is the child who cares for you the most, thinking about your illness and fearing to upset you, always working quietly. She turned her finger, her eyes filled with anger. And this Laura, she has taken her credit and placed it upon herself. Don't you think she should be punished? Law Grandma was momentarily unable to accept it. Then since it was Jasmine who did it, why didn't you tell me? Seeing her mother-in-law's incredulous expression, Sandra curled her lips into a sneer. Mom, do you remember? Jasmine used to call you Grandma when she was little, and you turned away in disgust without responding. And every year on your birthday, she would sing you the birthday song, but you never had the patience to listen to it all, even tossing the cards she made for you into the trash. Mom, for so many years, she has wanted to get close to you, but you have coldly pushed her away. She can only silently speak to you. Grandma, upon hearing this, covered her chest with one hand, feeling her head buzzing, but she couldn't even utter a word of rebuttal. You don't need to say anymore. Instead, she looked at Laura, her eyes devoid of the usual tenderness. Speak up. None of this is true. Laura bit her lip tightly, refusing to speak, but Stephen waved his hand, and immediately a whip lashed out. After a few screams, Laura finally begged for mercy. It was me. It was all my doing. I shouldn't have taken Jasmine's credit. Grandma, I know I was wrong. Please forgive me. I'm still young. If this continues, I'll be beaten to death. Sandra snapped at her. You're still young? Jasmine is only half a month older than you. Mentioning Jasmine, the pain that tore at Stephen's heart made him inexplicably irritable. He had already sent someone to investigate Jasmine's whereabouts, but the clues ultimately vanished at the hospital. At that moment, a crew member brought a USB drive, saying it contained the celebration video from the New Year's Eve cruise. Stephen looked at the computer screen filled with laughter and joy, his expression complicated. Jasmine suddenly appeared, smiling as she twirled around. Stephen, I know you're watching. This is my ball gown. I will wear it to dance the first dance of the new year with you. Stephen furrowed his brow. What did he do? He made Jasmine change out of her gown and into a mermaid costume to perform swimming in the water. Stephen, guess what gift I prepared for you this New Year's Eve? Suddenly, She blushed, biting her lip as she whispered, "It's myself. I know you've waited a long time. It's all my fault for being spoiled. I apologize to you here, hoping that we can be together for the rest of our lives. I love you, Stephen." He didn't know which words had pierced him, his heart feeling as if it were being cut by a knife. He suddenly stood up, snatched the whip from the bodyguard's hand, and struck Laura hard. The video on the computer was still playing when Sandra let out a sudden gasp. "Look, it's Jasmine who was originally surfacing." But Laura came over and pushed her back under the water. Stephen angrily threw the whip and raised his hand to slap Laura. This time he used all his strength, and Laura was left dazed from the blow. But Stephen didn't stop. He viciously grabbed her by the neck, wishing he could strangle her to death. "It's you. Who caused Jasmine? You almost killed her. You made her leave me." He painfully closed his eyes. Her smiling face Jasmine emerged in his mind. She was so looking forward to dancing with him at the new year, to giving herself to him. But what did he do? No wonder. Her first words after being rescued were to call off the engagement with him. At that moment, she must have been utterly disappointed in him. 23 years of being together, a fiancé she wanted to marry. Yet because of an outsider, he threw her into the cold pool water in humiliation. He still remembers the snowflakes drifting in the sky. That night was colder than usual. She must hate him to the core. Laura spat out a mouthful of blood, raising her eyes in shock to look at Stephen with full sarcasm. "Hate me? Is everything my fault? Stephen, your actions only show how much you care about Jasmine." A few scattered words felt like soft knives stabbing into his heart. It was like swallowing a fly. All his anger was stuck in his throat. Laura suddenly laughed coldly. The more she laughed, the more blood she spat out, from head to toe. There wasn't a single intact part. It was like a bat with broken wings, covered in blood. "Stephen, don't you think about how I could possibly deal with Jasmine all by myself? That's right. I did frame her on purpose. But the one punishing her isn't me. You were the one who pushed her into the water. You chose to save me in a critical moment. Clearly, it was your blind arrogance and self-righteousness. Your selective hearing. That made you blame all the mistakes on me." Stephen stared at Laura, speechless. After all, what she said was all true. It was he who personally pushed Jasmine into the water. When they were in danger on the boat, he chose to save others and gave up on her. Later, in the hospital, it was also he who, out of spite, kissed another woman. And it was he who personally drove Jasmine to an S house. I remember at the beginning she knelt down and begged him not to leave, but he still stubbornly left her at an S house. If it weren't for Jasmine running away, a disaster might have already occurred by now. Just thinking about Jasmine being sent to the bed of an old man on the verge of death because of his stupidity made him suddenly release his tightly clenched fist. The atmosphere around him had sunk to a freezing point. He silently walked upstairs, each step feeling like walking on the edge of a knife. Returning to the room, he stepped into the bathtub, submerging his head in the cold water. When the nanny brought dinner, a sudden scream pierced the air. "Not good. Young master has cut his wrist." Marco Fu is very good to Jasmine, caring about every aspect of her life. Marco also seems very mature, wise beyond his years. Although he is the only son in his family, he is much more mature than Stephen. "Rose, we are really worried about you going so far alone to take pictures, and not letting Marco come with you. It's fine as long as you're back. You don't know, Marco. This child heard you were missing and even jumped into the water without wearing a wetsuit." "All right, let's not talk about these things on such a joyous occasion." Marco spoke, and although his expression was calm, the way he tightly held Jasmine's hands was enough to show his inner excitement. "If we're not going to talk about it, then fine. By the way, Marco, don't you have a party tonight? Take Rose with you." Marco's mom personally dressed Jasmine, and in front of her, she opened the safe and took out a set of jewelry. There were diamonds, there were pearls, and there was emerald. As she tried on a set around Jasmine's neck, she ultimately settled on a pearl necklace. "This was passed down to me by Marco's grandmother, and today I pass it on to you, hoping that your future life with Marco will be as perfect as this pearl." Looking at herself in the mirror, The pearl necklace around Jasmine's neck emitted a soft and warm glow, making her skin appear even more delicate and snow-like. As he went downstairs, Marco's eyes flashed with surprise. He gentlemanly took Jasmine's hand, and the two of them got into the car together. In the bar's private room, the music was deafening. I heard that Marco drained a whole lake to find his crush. Just the equipment and labor cost 300 million. What does money matter? We Marco even dived down ourselves to search, and almost lost our lives getting tangled in the water weeds. Jasmine was sitting on the sofa, quietly sipping soda, listening to their discussion, unable to help but scrutinize Marco. The man's profile was sharp, his Adam's apple prominent, his gaze downward, with 2 buttons of his collar undone, both abstinent and sexy. Just thinking about how her sister was loved by such a man in her lifetime, Jasmine felt happy for her, but she also felt sad for her. After downing the juice in her cup, she walked into the bathroom. 2 women collided with her as they approached, their eyes filled with hatred. Rose, how did you not drown? How dare you come back? Have you forgotten how you made Marco brother wear a green hat? That's right, caught in the act of cheating in public, and you still have the nerve to be alive. Jasmine was taken aback. When she was on the brink of death, it was also in the water. So through some connection, she was able to communicate with her sister on a spiritual level. Marco arrived just in time, wrapping his arms around Jasmine and sternly instructing the bodyguard to throw out the women who had bullied her. Don't let me see you again, or the Wong family, the Liu family, and the Liu family can just wait for bankruptcy and to drink the northwest wind. The 3 women were roughly dragged away by the bodyguard, and there were many onlookers, but not a single person dared to intervene. No, Fu, we really know we were wrong. One of the women tried to grab Marco's clothing, but was ruthlessly thrown aside by the bodyguard, landing heavily on the ground in a disheveled heap. Marco's gaze was as cold as frost. He held Jasmine close, his eyes filled with tenderness. Rose, I'm sorry for scaring you. After getting into the car with Jasmine and closing the door, all the noise and unrest were shut out. Jasmine snuggled into Marco's embrace, feeling a mix of emotions. The car was very quiet. Marco's heartbeat echoed in her ears as she looked up and was met by the deep, unyielding color of his eyes. He lowered his head, slowly leaning towards Jasmine, their breaths beginning to intertwine. The phone rang. It was Marco. He frowned and did not answer. The calls kept coming in, and Jasmine worried there might be an emergency, urging him to pick up the phone. Only then did he casually press the answer button. On the other end of the line, a charming voice asked if he was free that evening. Marco said nothing, directly hung up the phone, and blocked the other party. He looked at Jasmine with a hint of guilt in his eyes. Sorry. It's a small celebrity I met at a dinner party before. I don't know how they got my phone number. It's nothing. Jasmine wasn't really concerned about it. Instead, she was surprised by Marco's candor. Don't worry. I won't attend such gatherings again. What about your business? Jasmine had previously attended such dinners with Steven. She knew it was all just a game. If you want to make it in the business world, how can you establish yourself without attending dinners? Marco stared at Jasmine's delicate lips, a smirk forming at the corner of his mouth. What? Are you worried your husband doesn't have money? Hearing the word husband, Jasmine was taken aback for a moment. Seeing her expression, Marco pressed his hand against her lips and suddenly leaned down to cover them. The scent of lemon candy mixed with cocktails filled her mouth. I didn't expect the usually gentle Marco to be so domineering. Jasmine completely didn't react. Her life 23 years ago was limited to holding hands, at most kissing Steven on the cheek, and even when they kissed, it was just a gentle touch of their lips. But Marco was like a kiss that conquered cities. She was left dazed and breathless from the kiss. Her thoughts were drifting, feeling her dress being lifted. A rough hand pressed against her waist, subtly suggesting a deeper exploration. Jasmine felt a bit dazed. She had no experience with this at all. Only now did she remember that she hadn't asked her sister and Marco what stage they were at. What if they had already? As she thought about it, her face turned red. She bit down hard. Hiss! Marco gasped softly, reaching up to wipe his lips. His long fingers were stained with a hint of bright red. He wasn't angry, but instead smiled and said, "Rose, why are you still as shy as before?" Jasmine felt her face was about to burst with redness. But the words of the several women from earlier echoed in her mind. How can you still have the face to live after being caught in bed with someone else in public? She didn't know what Rose had done, but if that were really the case, then why would Marco still treat her so well? She moved her lips and finally voiced her inner thoughts. What those people just said. Before she could finish her sentence, Marco silenced her with another kiss. After a while, he reluctantly pulled away, breathing slightly heavier. "Don't pay attention to them. So do you believe me?" Marco smiled gently. "You are my wife. If I don't believe you, who else would I believe?" With a flash of hostility in his eyes, he said, "I've already figured it out. This was all planned. You were framed. Don't worry. I've already sent the person who framed you to the police station. They have the evidence against him, and he won't be able to escape for long." When she got home, she learned from the maid at Fu's house that Rose had indeed been found lying in bed with a strange man. At that time, Marco had no doubts about her and instead took the person to the police station. Even so, Rose felt guilty towards Marco and decided to leave home after writing a letter. Recalling her sister's last words, Jasmine felt Rose was very likely already dead. That's why she wanted to marry Marco on her behalf. In fact, after that incident, Rose's reputation suffered greatly, and her subsequent disappearance only confirmed others' suspicions. Some even said she eloped with someone else. In the face of these rumors, Marco still firmly believed in Rose, even risking his life for her. Fu's parents wanted him to break off the engagement, and he even declared his intent to die for it. "I have only loved her in my life. My Marco's wife can only be Rose." Moved by their love, Jasmine suddenly understood her sister's feelings. "There are actually people in the world who love me so much. If I can't be by his side, everything is meaningless. I'm afraid my sister must have regretted it before she died." Jasmine's eyes suddenly welled up with tears. Marco, not knowing when he had walked in, felt heartbroken upon seeing someone crying. What happened? He glanced at the nanny standing aside, his words sharp. "Who is gossiping again?" "No." Jasmine quickly clutched his arm. "Marco, please don't misunderstand." Saying this, she waved her hand to send the nanny away. "I can't remember some things, so I wanted to ask Sister Wong for information. Next time you can't remember, just ask me directly." Marco held her tightly in his arms, his eyes filled with determination and affection. "Rose, don't worry. We'll get married at the beginning of next month. As for the true culprit behind your framing, I've already uncovered them." Moments later, the butler announced a family of 3 kneeling at the door. It turns out to be Fu Mom's sister, brother-in-law, and their daughter. Marco Fu coldly scanned the family, his tone devoid of any warmth. "Everything you have done to Rose, the law will give a fair judgment." Fu Mom rushed over upon hearing the news. "Sister, you have to save my daughter. She is your niece. You can't turn your elbow outward. We are family." When she learned that Rose was framed by her own niece, a glimmer of hatred flashed in Fu Mom's eyes. She didn't say a word and directly slapped her own younger sister. "It's all about poor upbringing. It's your parents' fault for not educating their offspring well, almost causing Rose to die. I must sever my sisterly ties with you now." The police car that was capturing people had already surrounded them, and Marco's cousin was in tears. "I know I was wrong. Cousin, please forgive me this once." Marco let out a cold laugh. "Impossible." Rose was tightly held in Marco's arms. She didn't know Marco's cousin, but when her gaze met hers, she felt a surge of disgust. Perhaps this is the bond of sisterhood. She loathed the person who killed her sister. At the command of the police, they arrested Marco's cousin, who struggled and screamed, even cursing Marco for not finding happiness. Jasmine was suddenly shaken. "Wait! You say Marco won't find happiness? I am his happiness. Unfortunately, next month we are getting married, and you won't be able to see it." "Rose." Marco was somewhat moved. He gently yet firmly picked up Jasmine and strode towards the luxury car parked by the roadside, not caring at all Fu about his parents and the onlookers. In his eyes, there was only one person at that moment. The car door closed, isolating them from all the noise. the car's voice announced. Tonight there is a meteor shower of the Perseids. On the mountaintop in the suburbs, the two sat side by side on a large rock, gazing up at the vast night sky. A meteor streaked across the sky, and Jasmine unconsciously closed her eyes, making a wish. Marco was quietly watching her from the side, his eyes filled with affection and tenderness, as more meteors began to streak across the night sky, dancing like spirits in the air. Marco suddenly turned around and gently embraced Jasmine. Under the witness of the meteor shower, the two slowly drew closer, their lips meeting, a gentle and lingering kiss, as if to merge each other's souls into one body. All words transformed into the deep affection and entanglement of this moment. Jasmine, don't go! The television played Jasmine's New Year's greeting recorded for Stephen, repeating over and over. Stephen sat in the dimly lit living room, his eyes fixed on the television screen, a mix of pain and regret swirling within him. Jasmine's gentle voice echoed repeatedly in his ears. Stephen, Happy New Year! Stephen, actually, I have so much to say to you. You were my first love, and you are the love of my life. Throwing the bottle aside, he grabbed his clothes and ran out. Where are you going? Sandra felt a pang of worry, remembering how the last time Stephen had attempted suicide, it had caused a media frenzy after he was taken to the hospital. The Law family has been trending for several days because of this incident. Fortunately, it was discovered in time, and the person was rescued. But when he returned home, Stephen fell silent, spending his days glued to the television. I need to go for a walk. Leaving a few words, Stephen stepped out the door. Oh no, where did the young master go? He just had a drink. The nanny pointed at the scattered bottles with concern, and Sandra suddenly felt a tightness in her chest. Quick, have the driver stop him. At that moment, he was driving through the night, and a pedestrian suddenly crossed the road. In an instant, he lost control, and the vehicle crashed violently into the roadside guardrail. His consciousness gradually blurred, and in the moment he closed his eyes, he saw Jasmine. When Sandra arrived, Stephen was lying on the ground, and she hurriedly called 120. The incident of Stephen losing control while driving under the influence instantly trended. But fortunately, Sandra had experience and quickly suppressed the trending topic. However, this matter still reached the board of directors. The company's stock price dropped by 10% as soon as it opened. We cannot allow someone who has made the news for drunk driving to continue holding a key position. You can't do this. Stephen is still lying in the hospital. Law is my husband's property. Law grandma personally leaned on her cane, arguing with them logically. But the next moment she was so angry that she collapsed. And after being rushed to the hospital, the doctor was helpless. The second stroke has caused hemiplegia. I'm afraid she will have to spend the rest of her life in bed. Moreover, some paparazzi caught a whiff of something different and uncovered Stephen's love triangle. Because Stephen has maintained the persona of a devoted husband for many years. When the news of him kissing a financially supported student from his family broke, countless fans of his ship with Jasmine were devastated. Moreover, the partners of the law group are also clamoring to terminate their contracts. Since he could be betrayed by his childhood sweetheart, who knows when he might secretly collaborate with others. In an instant, the reputation of the law family plummeted to an all-time low. Soon, the board voted to deny Stephen's continuation as CEO of the company. In an instant, the law family was no longer the glory of the past. When Stephen received the call, he was still taking his medicine. Mr. Law, we have found the whereabouts of Miss Jasmine. She was last seen near the Fu family home. Stephen pushed the medicine bowl aside and insisted on getting out of bed. The nanny couldn't stop him and could only call for help loudly. Sandra walked over, looking at her son with concern. Stephen, just listen to your mom this once. Stephen's eyes were red, his voice hoarse. Mom, I can't give up. She is my life. Without her, what is the point of living? Sandra, seeing this, had tears welling up in her eyes. She regarded Jasmine as her daughter. How could she not want to find Jasmine? She waved her hand. Go ahead. Just this once. If she doesn't want to come back, don't force her. Their family has already hurt her enough. Even if Jasmine doesn't want to come back, she can understand. Ignoring his physical weakness, Stephen put on his coat. Outside, the night was deep and the cold wind was biting, but a fire was burning fiercely in his heart. A huge mix of joy and anxiety intertwined. The streetlights cast a dim yellow glow, stretching his shadow long. As the cold wind blew, he couldn't help but tighten his coat. But when the snow began to fall from the sky, the door of Fu family remained closed. The assistant urged him to go home. Young master, the current head of the Fu family is Marco Fu. I've heard he's not an easy person to deal with. I won't leave. You can try knocking again. Stephen clenched his fists, his eyes fixed intently on the villa's second floor in the distance. The man gently wrapped his arms around the woman's waist, and she, surprisingly, did not refuse, even responding with a light kiss. This scene pierced Stephen's heart like a sharp blade. His pupils constricted suddenly, his fists clenched so tightly that the knuckles turned white. The pain in his chest was nothing compared to the shock and despair in his heart. He murmured to himself, his voice low and hoarse, "Jasmine, how could you?" A surge of unprecedented anger and resentment welled up in Stephen's heart. He could no longer care about much, and he suddenly pushed aside his assistant and jumped over the wall into the villa. "Jasmine, get down here!" However, the two people on the second floor seemed oblivious, holding each other even tighter. At this moment, Stephen felt his heart was bleeding. His call attracted the bodyguard, and immediately someone took him to the living room. After a while, Marco came down slowly. He was wearing a bathrobe, and just the right amount of suspicious red was showing at his collarbone. Law, breaking into a private residence and shouting, "What exactly do you want to do?" Stephen's eyes widened in anger, as if they were about to shoot fire. "Marco, stop pretending. Jasmine is my fiancée. What right do you have to hold her? You third party. What qualifications do you have to stand here and talk to me?" Marco's expression instantly darkened. He squinted slightly, looking up and down at Stephen, as if he were watching a joke. "Let him go." The bodyguard immediately released Stephen and stepped back. Stephen suddenly swung his fist, aiming for Marco's face. However, Marco reacted quickly, sidestepping effortlessly to avoid the blow. He let out a cold laugh, grabbing Stephen's wrist and twisting it hard, causing Stephen's face to change with pain. "Humph. Do you really think you can take me on?" Marco said disdainfully, forcefully throwing Stephen aside. Young Master Law should take better care of himself, with all the wrist cutting and car accidents. What a fine man. Yet he insists on performing the tricks of crying, throwing tantrums, and hanging around. Stephen was gasping for breath, his eyes filled with red veins. How could he not hear Marco mocking him? But today he had to take Jasmine away. He had a premonition that if he couldn't take her away today, he would never see Jasmine again for the rest of his life. "Jasmine, I truly love you. I was wrong. I will change. I have already sent Laura back to her hometown, watching her marry a blind man with my own eyes. She will never obstruct us again." Jasmine heard everything clearly from upstairs, but her heart felt no ripples. She had already accepted Marco. He was a good man, and she would take good care of him for her sister. As for Stephen, her leaving has already said it all. Stephen shouted for a long time, wanting to rush upstairs, but was kicked down the stairs by Marco. With a dull thud, he curled up in pain, blood seeping from the corner of his mouth, his face as pale as paper. The excruciating pain in his limbs made it almost impossible for him to move. Each breath felt like a fire igniting in his chest, burning his internal organs. But what was even harder to bear than the physical pain was Jasmine's silence. Looking up at the floor above, that door remained closed, and a nameless pang of sorrow surged within. He walked up to Stephen, crouched down, and threw an exquisite invitation in Stephen's face. "This is the wedding invitation for me and Rose." Marco's voice was deep and powerful, each word hitting Stephen's heart like a hammer. Stephen shakily picked up the invitation, staring at the glaring golden letters, tears blurring his vision. In that moment, he heard the sound of his own heart breaking. The pain made it difficult for him to even breathe. "No, I want to hear Jasmine say it to me herself. I am her fiancé. You are just strangers who met for the first time. I have been engaged to Rose for a long time and have never heard of Jasmine." Stephen was taken aback, looking up at the second floor in disbelief. He wouldn't mistake that shadow. It was definitely Jasmine. Someone, show them out. Hearing the commotion downstairs, Jasmine felt conflicted and was ready to come clean to Marco. After a burst of noise, the door opened, and Marco's deep, magnetic voice rang out. Rose. Marco. I want to tell you that I actually. He gently raised his hand, his fingertips lightly tracing Jasmine's cheek, as if confirming the reality of everything before him. No need to explain. I believe you. To meet you again is already the greatest miracle for me. In fact, what he didn't tell her was that when the lake was drained, a corpse was unearthed. After the DNA test, it was confirmed to be Rose. No one can accept the tragic death of their loved one. His world suddenly collapsed. If it weren't for the heavy burden on him, he would rather die alongside her. Living every day like a walking corpse had worn him out. Until one day, the doorbell rang, and a woman who looked exactly like Rose appeared by his side. Just as Jasmine was about to try to explain everything to him, Marco suddenly leaned in and silenced her lips with a gentle yet irresistible kiss. Everything is fate. It is all the best arrangement, Marco said softly in Jasmine's ear, his tone filled with determination and tenderness. How could he let a treasure that was lost and then found disappear from his side again? Jasmine's eyes gently closed, her hands instinctively wrapping around Marco's waist, responding to the warmth and strength he offered. Strangely, she had never felt this way about Steven. Breathing became increasingly rapid as the two embraced tightly, completing what had been left unfinished moments ago. On the other side, the sky is about to fall at the Law family's home. Steven was escorted back by Fu's bodyguard. Steven entered the house with a bruised face, supported by the nanny. Sandra regretted deeply. She shouldn't have let her son go. Since Jasmine has her own plans, let her go. Steven said nothing, just looking at the gray in his mother's hair, his eyes softening. Mom, thank you for your hard work. In his 20-some years of life, he had never said such words. Sandra couldn't help but shed tears. It's okay, child. As long as you live well, that's better than anything. We can make a comeback. Steven curled his lips, secretly mocking. Even if he made a comeback, Jasmine could never return, unless, on the wedding day, a grand wedding was held at the Fu family's West Mountain Manor. After the heavy snow, a pair of snowmen stood at the entrance of the manor, one dressed in a suit and the other in a wedding dress. Inside the manor, ice sculptures adorned the space, transforming it into a magnificent ice castle, truly dreamlike. Steven's heart felt like it was being pierced by needles, a wave of pain washing over him. This was supposed to be his wedding. Jasmine, I don't want you to marry Marco. We are meant to be together since childhood. With this persistent thought, he bypassed the guests and quietly ascended to the second floor. However, upon turning the doorknob, he found the room completely empty. An hour ago, Marco was adjusting his clothes in front of the mirror. His handsome face reflected back at him. Rose, do you think this looks okay? Jasmine stood up, gently placing her hands on his shoulders, her eyes filled with affection. Marco, are we really going to leave soon? She felt a bit uneasy. After all, the guests would be arriving soon. And if the two of them, the hosts, weren't there, would it? Don't worry, my parents have already been informed, and they will entertain the guests. As for us, Marco wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her neck. As for us, let's go on an impromptu trip. Steven, his eyes were bloodshot, his hands clenched into fists, and he struck the doorframe with a determined punch. Damn it! He never expected they would travel to get married. Marco, you did this on purpose. Steven just walked out, not even taking a sip of the milk tea. Mom advised you to let it go. Sandra holding her chest. She frowned and said, she is already married now and has her own happiness. You should stop being so obsessed. She has been feeling very tired lately. Law has gone through so much, and she has been holding on all by herself. Indeed, young master, you should manage the household. You don't know how serious Madam's illness has become. The nanny also urged from the side. Steven's eyes were bloodshot, and his usually cold expression was now filled with exhaustion. Where is the spirited appearance of President Law from back then? I'll go check on Grandma." With that, Stephen went upstairs. At this moment, Grandma Law was lying in bed, half paralyzed and unable to move. Her eyes were cloudy, and her lips trembled slightly. When she saw Stephen come in, a glimmer of light flashed in her eyes, but when she realized it was only him, it faded again. She struggled to open her mouth, wanting to say something, but only emitted a sound of woo-woo. The nanny saw this and quickly explained, "The old lady has been looking at that cane. She probably misses Miss Jasmine." Stephen's eyes turned red. "Grandma, I'm sorry. I couldn't bring her back." Just the thought that the person by her side now was not himself made Stephen's heart ache to the point of gasping for breath. "Something's wrong. The madam has fainted." When Sandra was taken to the hospital, she was already unconscious. Stephen waited outside the emergency room until he was called into the doctor's office. "Law madam has been ill for decades. Asthma cannot be eradicated. We must ensure the patient lives comfortably and with a relaxed spirit. The illness will naturally improve." Just then, the assistant called. "Law sir, the board of directors is now pressuring you to sell your and madam's shares at a low price. Misfortunes never come singly. On this winter night, it began to rain mixed with snow." Stephen walked down the road, pale and lost. With a loud rumble, a tall, thin figure swayed and fell down. Stephen developed a high fever, but he still insisted on going to Law's. For several days, he was receiving 4 drips in the office while handling affairs. After a morning, beads of sweat began to form on his forehead, his face pale as paper. At that moment, there was a commotion outside the door. "Let me in to see him. Otherwise, I will call the police." Stephen furrowed his brow, a sense of foreboding rising in his heart. "Laura, how did you end up here?" Laura glared at him, her eyes filled with anger and resentment. "Stephen, you caused my family to be ruined, and I must settle this score with you today." She rushed forward, wanting to grab Stephen's collar, but was timely stopped by the secretary and bodyguard. Laura shouted emotionally, "I'm pregnant. You have to take responsibility." Stephen had reached his limit of patience, roaring as he slapped Laura, causing her to stagger back, her face instantly swelling. "You dare hit me!" Laura screamed, pulling out her mobile phone to call the police. Ever since she was exposed for intervening in Stephen and Jasmine's relationship, she has been publicly condemned, even afraid to show her face on the street. Later, she was knocked out by Stephen and secretly sent to the village, where her mother placed her on the blind man's bed. She still remembers how Stephen told her at that time, "This is your just desserts. Consider it a repayment for the mistakes you've made." Now she is pregnant with a child, bound by the poverty of her husband's family, all because of the man in front of her. As for whose child is in her belly, it no longer matters. What matters is that she wants everyone to know what Stephen did to her. Thinking of this, she sent all her past with Stephen to everyone's inbox. They have videos and photos, all unedited. Stephen was furious, gripping Laura's neck tightly. "You want to die." At that moment Stephen's eyes held nothing but hatred. "I warned you. Do not appear in front of me. This is your retribution." After saying that, he suddenly kicked towards Laura's abdomen. Laura felt a sharp pain all over, instinctively protecting her abdomen, her face suddenly turning red. "No, my child." Her eyes were filled with fear and anxiety as she pleaded. "Stephen, this is our child." Stephen let out a cold laugh. "If you hadn't drugged me back then, Jasmine wouldn't have left me. This child, whether or not he is mine, cannot stay." Laura shook her head in tears, saying, "He is yours. He is yours." At that moment, she had no other way. She never expected Stephen to publicly assault a pregnant woman in front of hundreds of people at the company. What was even more unexpected was that not a single person in the crowd reached out to help her. The police arrived quickly. They subdued Stephen and took him away. Laura was lying on the ground unable to get up, blood staining her dress. "My child, who will come to save me?" Jasmine has been to many places with Marco. All along, her world consisted of only 3 words: Stephen. But now, everything has changed. Marco took her to see the Eiffel Tower in Paris, to experience ancient civilization in Rome, and to enjoy romantic sunsets by the sea. At each place, Jasmine would smile particularly happily, and Marco's eyes were filled with affection as he looked at her. They tasted local delicacies together, took photos for memories, and experienced quite a few little adventures together. Jasmine realized that being with Marco always brought her so much joy. At a dance party in a foreign town, Jasmine was sitting on the sofa scrolling through her phone when she inadvertently saw news from her home country. The news mentioned Stephen, but her heart was no longer stirred. "May I ask you to dance?" Marco graciously extended his hand to invite Jasmine to dance, and as they moved to the beautiful melody, the two were immersed in the joy brought by the dance. A month later, she was pregnant. The Fu family was so happy they didn't know what to do. They set off fireworks for 3 days at the Bund and established a foundation in Rose's name to help homeless children. After learning about it, Stephen rubbed his forehead. Laura's child was lost because of him, and there were many witnesses. So when she filed a lawsuit against him in court, he had no way to defend himself. In the end, it cost him 100 million, and he barely managed to extricate himself. But Laura was not satisfied. She even sneaked into his home and poisoned his tea, causing him to go blind. What can Stephen compare to Marco now? Thinking about the woman he loved carrying another man's child, tears silently streamed down Stephen's tightly shut eyes. He suddenly remembered the past. On New Year's Eve, her first words after being rescued were to cancel the engagement. "My heart feels like it has been pierced by a sharp knife." Her words still echoed in my ears. "Stephen, I love you so much. I want to give myself to you." It's all his fault. The woman who longed to give herself to him without reservation. He actually pushed her into the cold pool himself. This isn't even the worst of it. If it gets any worse, Jasmine will become a tool for good luck. This is all his fault. His heart began to spasm, and by the time he realized what was happening, he had already fallen to the ground. When he opened his eyes again, he heard the doctor talking to the assistant about something. The left ventricular apex shows significant outward bulging due to motion loss, resulting in severe chest pain, also known as broken heart syndrome. The patient appears to have suffered a tremendous blow. It turns out, his heart was truly broken. That's not the main point. The main point is that we found a tumor in the patient's brain, and we have already sampled and analyzed it. And it is malignant. In an instant, Stephen's mind went blank. His body trembled violently, involuntarily curling up. He bit down hard on his lower lip. His breathing began to quicken, and the surveillance on him had already started to alarm. A group of doctors rushed in to begin the rescue. Despite undergoing a craniotomy, Stephen's tumor still spread. Half of them still had a 5-year survival rate. But Law's overall condition deteriorated too quickly, and he had lost the will to live. The news of his illness was kept from the family. So when Sandra came to see her son and heard the bad news, she cried all night. 8 months later, Jasmine's child was born. Diego found her with her mother's diary, tearfully saying that he had been blinded by greed and sent the newborn Rose away. "At first, you had a twin sister named Jasmine, but she went missing. So Dad only has you as his daughter now." Rose listened quietly, without any reaction. Marco walked over and let the nanny take the child, then held her protectively in his arms. "What evidence do you have to prove that Rose is your child?" Diego quickly took out his late wife's diary. "This is the evidence, and I can also do a paternity test." Hearing about the paternity test, Jasmine unconsciously tightened her grip on Marco's arm. "No need." Marco snatched the diary from the nanny and then called the bodyguard to invite Diego out. A father, after his wife suffered a difficult childbirth, sent away his own twin daughters separately. She could never forgive him, no matter what. Moreover, Diego's arrival at this moment was not out of genuine love for his daughter and grandson, but rather for the sake of the Fu family. Having failed to bring joy, he offended the Ma family. His visit now was not a sudden realization that he had a daughter, but rather a desire to see his wealthy son-in-law. "Marco." Jasmine smiled faintly, saying nothing more. Sandra suddenly arrived, her hair now gray, holding a delicate gift box in her hands. Facing the baby in the cradle, Sandra was filled with tenderness, softly offering the most sincere blessing. "Child, may you have peace and joy throughout your life." Then, She turned to Jasmine with a hint of worry in her expression. Have you heard about Stephen? Can you go check on him? Jasmine looked down, not responding. Mister, I am now the daughter-in-law of the Fu family. Sandra was taken aback, but couldn't say a word. At that moment, her phone rang, and she hurriedly answered when she saw the screen. What? What did you say? When she turned back, Sandra's face was streaked with tears. In the hospital, the attending physician sighed. Clearly, Stephen was fine just before. How could it suddenly be like this? Another winter has come. The snow was falling heavily. The Law family's grave was buried halfway up the mountain. Sandra had just burned paper for her mother-in-law and son when she turned around and found a madwoman standing behind her. Stephen, I brought the child to see you. It's actually Laura. Her figure appeared particularly distorted in the dim yellow light, her gaze hollow and dreamy, as if the entire world had been reduced to just her and that cold gravestone. Stephen, look. I brought the baby. He looks so much like you. Sandra only then noticed that the child she was holding was haphazardly wrapped in rags and old clothes. The mountain wind carried a biting chill, yet Laura was completely unaware. She slowly walked to the gravestone, gently, as if afraid to disturb something, and lay down on the cold stone tablet engraved with Stephen's name, a strange satisfaction appearing on her face. Crazy, truly crazy. Sandra hurriedly left with the help of the nanny. She didn't want to have anything more to do with this crazy woman. Stephen, no one can separate us anymore. Laura closed her eyes, a faint smile curling at the corners of her mouth. On the other side, Fu family. Jasmine was looking at the diary left by her mom, the words dancing with hopes for the future, especially the news of her pregnancy, which filled her mom with anticipation for the arrival of 2 new lives. Marco quietly approached, 2 cups of hot tea in his hands releasing a delicate aroma. Have a cup of tea and take a break. Jasmine looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. Marco gently brushed her hair. If you want to cry, cry. I won't make fun of you. She tugged at the corner of her mouth, a sourness rising in her nose. Marco gently embraced her, his voice firm. No matter when, you can rely on me. His embrace was warm and strong, capable of shielding them from all the storms and cold of the world. Time seemed to stand still, leaving only 2 hearts quietly beating, listening to and responding to each other. She buried herself in his chest, listening to the steady and powerful rhythm of his heartbeat. Having you is truly wonderful.